It was supposed to be just tubing down the lazy river, or in this case, the Apple River. Just people out sitting on their tubes, drinking some beer, smoking some weed, and enjoying the coolness of the river as they floated down. We've seen horror movies when this turns into sharks or piranhas attacking people, but this ordinary day turned deadly, but in a different way. This is a trial update on Just Legal History, and I am your host, Mike. So let's talk about a trial that started this week up in Wisconsin. On July 30th of 2022, several groups were on the Apple River enjoying a day of tubing. One group had Nicolae Miu in it, one group of college guys, and another one a large mixed group. Nicolae came over close to the group of college guys. Things escalated. Several people from the third group came over. A fight broke out, and then Nicolae pulled out a knife and 5 people were stabbed. Isaac Schumann was killed, and 4 other people sustained knife injuries. Nicolae is on trial for the murder of Isaac and attempted murder on the other 4 people. First, if you haven't seen the video of the incident, please take a look at it. I will link below. It is a video that is a little over 3 minutes. Unfortunately, it's not the clearest video, so it's definitely hard to always follow it. Now that you've seen the footage, let's talk about what we saw. We saw whom we later know is Miu approach the group of college kids. He appears to run a little bit and looks like what is snorkeling gear in his mouth, and it looks like he grabs at one of the tubes. We hear some arguing from the crowd toward Miu. We then see Miu walk away a bit, and then some women approach Miu. There is another confrontation, and then we see Miu being hit and pushed. We see him get up and then do things to several people that we later learn is him stabbing people. We hear screaming and more chaos. We then learn over time that the police show up, interview people, and people are taken to the hospital to tend to their wounds. Nicolae Miu was arrested at the exit of the river a little bit later. So far in the trial, we've heard from the witnesses who were there and the ones that were stabbed. We've heard from the person who took the video, a few people from the college group, and some from the third group. What we hear and see from the witnesses, though, is how memory is influenced by not only their viewpoint, but also by what they want their own behavior to be. And that is what will be the hard part for the jury, because they will need to separate what people said from the truth. We've heard from the people who were stabbed. They were A.J. Martin, Riley Madison, Tony, and Dante Carlson. In the afternoon on the third day, we heard from the wife of Nicolae, or at least the time of the incident. It appears they are now divorced. Before her testimony, both sides argued whether or not certain conversations could be brought into evidence. The judge ruled certain conversations were spousal privilege, but the prison calls could be brought into the evidence. Spousal privilege has 2 parts normally. One is that a spouse is not compelled to testify against the other spouse. The other is communications between spouses are privileged, and both parties have to waive that privilege. There is an exception if the communication was not intended to be private, then it can come in. It appears that Nick's wife waived privilege in regarding to testifying against him, but some of their communication was privileged. She then testified to the jury. She said that Nick brought the knife that day to cut the strings with the tubing. She then talked about how they lost his cell phone that was playing the music and that Nick went to look for it. She was pretty far from the incident, so she could not offer much on what happened. So here are the issues as I see them. There is no question of what happened. Somebody stabbed other people, but the question is intent and if he was acting in self-defense. What people have to think and remember is that you have to go with what happened, not with what you want to have happened, and it has to be looked at what a normal person would do in the situation. The jury needs to look at it from Nick's eyes, not from their own. It's very easy to Monday morning quarterback and say that Nicolae should never have gone over there, but that's not realistic. Self-defense cases are very hard because it's trying to get in the mind of the person. Wisconsin is not a stand their ground state. Stand your ground means that you don't have a duty to retreat, but since Wisconsin isn't that, there could be a duty to retreat. And this is what people will argue, and that is that Mr. Miu should have left when he had the chance. But Miu had a right to be there to look for his phone, and it was the group of college kids that were being the horrible people and calling him a pedophile and a raper and asking him to leave. Just because someone asks you to leave doesn't mean they were in the right. There are times in the video where it appears that Mr. Miu is trying to start walking back to his tubes, but then people keep coming up and pestering him to keep going. So I do not believe that Mr. Miu had a duty to retreat. Second, who threw the first punch? One of the arguments against using the self-defense is that if the person initiates the fight and that they threw the first punch, then they lose the right for self-defense. Several of the people testified that they believed that Nicolae hit one of the women first, but this was after the women got in Nicolae's face and touched him. I personally don't see him on the video striking any lady. The first punch I see is one of the guys hitting Nicolae's face. I think the biggest thing in Miu's favor is that I believe is that the level of sound and taunting by the college kids and the others that were joined were close, if not to the point of inciting a riot. You have like 10-20 people yelling loud, calling you names and calling you a raper, and then getting up in your face and touching you. So I believe that the group initiated the fight. The biggest thing that will hurt Nick is his changing stories to law enforcement. I have joined the trial late to hear about the changes, but from what I understand is that he initially told officers that he thought it was the kids who stabbed each other. He also got rid of the knife. He did talk about the incident with the police without a lawyer, and it appears it was a different story. The defense will need to address what he said to the officers after the arrest. We await for what he says on the stand. However, the video is good evidence for what he did and didn't do that day. And last, does Nick need to testify? I think he needs to testify. You need to explain to the jury that you're feeling or worried about during the events that happen. Several concerns with testifying. One is that you worry that you will come across as sounding horrible. And can you keep your story straight? And second, can it bring about any bad past behaviors? He will need to explain why he told the cops what he did and why we should trust him now. The trial continues, and I will keep you up to date on what happens. Sound credit Galactic Rap by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons.